Alien girl laughed, sure he'd squeal, then broke her hand on his abs of steel. The galactic commerce hub on Nexus Prime buzzed with the usual cacophony of 1,000 different species conducting business. Towering spires of gleaming metal and glass stretched toward the burnt orange sky, interconnected by transparent walkways that crisscrossed the metropolis like a spider's web. It was here in this melting pot of interstellar commerce, that the Krylorian delegation had arrived to negotiate mining rights in the Taurus sector. Commander Naira Vex strode purposefully through the diplomatic quarter, her bright orange skin a stark contrast to the muted grays and blues of the architecture. Her silvery white hair was pulled back in a high ponytail that swayed with each confident step. As the head of security for the Krylorian delegation, she had overseen 3 days of tense negotiations that had left her muscles knotted with stress. These humans are impossible, she muttered to herself, recalling the stubborn Earth representative who had countered every Krylorian demand with infuriating calm. They act as if they own the entire quadrant. The Krylorians were warriors by nature and tradition. Their homeworld, with its punishing gravity and harsh climate, had forged them into one of the physically strongest species in the known galaxy. Nira herself could bench press 3 times her body weight without breaking a sweat, a fact she took considerable pride in. Seeking to burn off some frustration before the next round of talks, she decided to explore the lower levels of the Commerce Hub. Her security detail had the delegation covered, and she needed space to clear her head. As she wandered through the less polished corridors of the station's recreational sector, a rhythmic clanging sound caught her attention. Following the noise, she came upon a small facility with a sign that read, Iron Paradise Gym, Earth-Style Fitness. Through the transparent walls, she could see various exercise equipment and a handful of beings from different species attempting to use them. But what caught her eye was a lone human male in the corner, methodically lifting what appeared to be primitive metal weights. He was shirtless, his powerful torso glistening with sweat, showcasing a perfectly sculpted abdomen. His light chestnut hair was cropped short, military style, and a confident smirk played on his lips as he completed another repetition. Nira couldn't help but scoff. In an age of genetic optimization and nano-enhanced physiotherapy, this human was using crude metal discs to build muscle. It seemed absurdly inefficient. Curiosity piqued, she entered the facility. The human noticed her immediately, hard not to, given her distinctive appearance, but continued his workout without breaking rhythm. "What the hell is this human male doing, lifting all that metal and iron?" Naira asked loudly, not bothering to hide her mockery. "Don't your people have proper strength augmentation chambers?" The human set down his weights and turned to face her fully. His eyes, a deep green that reminded Naira of the forests on her homeworld, assessed her with calm interest. "Sometimes the old ways work best," he replied, his voice deeper than she'd expected. "I'm Captain John Reed, Earth Defense Force." He extended a hand, a human greeting, custom she recognized but found unnecessary. "Commander Naira Vex, Krylorian Elite Guard," she responded, ignoring his hand. "Your method seems inefficient and primitive." John shrugged, seemingly unbothered by her dismissal. "Maybe, but it works for me." He patted his abdomen, which Naira had to admit was impressively defined. These didn't come from a chamber. "Please," Naira rolled her eyes. "Krylorian children have stronger cores. Your species is physically inferior. It's just biology." Instead of taking offense, John's smirk widened into something challenging. "Punch me in the stomach," he said calmly. Naira blinked, certain she'd misheard. "What? You heard me. Punch me in the stomach," he repeated, his expression unchanged. "If we're so inferior, it should be no problem for you." Naira laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "You'll drop to the floor screaming in pain. I don't want to cause a diplomatic incident." "Go ahead, hit me," John insisted, standing with his arms slightly away from his body, presenting his midsection as a target. "I won't file any complaints." Naira hesitated, then shrugged. If the human wanted a demonstration of Krylorian strength, who was she to deny him? Besides, she was still irritated from the negotiations. "Your funeral," she muttered, setting her stance and cocking her fist back. She didn't use her full strength, or she wasn't a monster, but she put enough force behind the punch to make her point. Her fist connected with his abdomen with a solid thud. And then pain exploded through her hand. "Fuck!" Naira screamed, cradling her injured hand against her chest. It felt like she'd punched a bulkhead. A tear of pain flashed in her eye as her face contorted in shock and disbelief. "What the... How did you..." John hadn't even flinched. If anything, his smirk had grown more pronounced. "Like I said, sometimes the old ways work best." He reached for a towel and draped it around his neck. "You might want to get that hand looked at. Medical bay is on level 3. Nira stared at him, clutching her throbbing hand, completely reassessing the human before her. "That's not possible," she whispered. "No human should be that hard." "There's a lot about humans you probably don't know," John replied, gathering his things. "Maybe you'd like to find out more over a drink. After you get that hand fixed, of course." Nira found herself nodding before she could think better of it. This human had just upended everything she thought she knew about their species. And despite the pain radiating from her likely broken hand, she was intrigued. "Fine," she said, trying to maintain some dignity. "One drink, for scientific purposes." John's laugh was warm and genuine. "Of course, purely scientific." As they walked toward the exit together, Nira couldn't help but steal another glance at his abdomen. What other surprises did humans have in store? The medical bay on level 3 was sleek and efficient, staffed by a mix of organic and synthetic medical personnel. A Taurian doctor with 4 arms expertly wrapped Nira's hand after confirming 2 fractured metacarpals. "How did this happen?" the doctor asked, his secondary eyes blinking in curiosity. "Training accident," Nira lied smoothly, ignoring John's poorly concealed smirk from across the room. Once discharged with a regenerative bone stimulator attached to her hand, Nira found John waiting in the corridor. "The cosmic drift in an hour," he suggested, naming one of the station's more upscale lounges. "I owe you a drink for being such a good sport." "You owe me more than a drink for my broken hand," Nira retorted, but there was no real anger in her voice. "Fine, 1 hour." Back in her quarters, Nira received an encrypted message from General Dravos, her commanding officer and the head of Krylorian military intelligence. "Commander Vex," the holographic image of the stern-faced general materialized above her comm unit. "We have intelligence suggesting the humans are using these negotiations as cover for something else. They've been making unusual movements in the Taurus sector for months. Your new mission: get close to their delegation, find out what they're hiding, and sabotage these talks if necessary. Krylorian interests must be protected at all costs." Nira's stomach tightened. "Understood, General." "One more thing," Dravos added, his tone hardening. "We've detected your biometric signature in proximity to a human male, Captain John Reed, Earth Defense Force. His profile suggests he's more than a simple soldier. Use this connection to your advantage, but remember where your loyalties lie." The hologram flickered out, leaving Nira staring at empty space. She cursed under her breath. Of course they were monitoring her, and now she had orders to spy on and potentially sabotage the very people she was supposed to be negotiating with in good faith, including John. An hour later, she entered the Cosmic Drift, a lounge designed to mimic the view from a starship traveling at warp speed. The walls were transparent, showing the swirling colors of simulated hyperspace. John was already there, now dressed in civilian clothes that did little to hide his impressive physique. "Commander," he greeted her, standing as she approached. "You clean up nice?" Nira had changed into a form-fitting outfit of Krylorian design, practical yet elegant. "Captain," she acknowledged, sliding into the booth across from him. "I hope you've ordered something strong." "Terran whiskey for me, and Krylorian fire wine for you," he said, gesturing to the drinks already on the table. "I did my homework." "Impressive," she admitted, taking a sip of the familiar, burning liquid. "Not many non-Krylorians can even pronounce the name of this drink, let alone order it correctly." "I make it a point to learn about the cultures I interact with," John replied. His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken, "especially when they intrigue me." Nira forced herself to remember her mission: get close, gather information, sabotage if necessary. But as they talked, moving from diplomatic small talk to more personal subjects, she found herself genuinely enjoying his company. "So what really brings the Earth Defense Force to a trade negotiation?" she asked casually after their second round. "Seems below your pay grade." John's expression shifted subtly. I could ask you the same, Commander. The Krylorian elite guard doesn't typically handle mining rights discussions. They stared at each other, the unspoken understanding that neither was being entirely truthful hanging between them. Let's just say I'm here to protect Krylorian interests, Nira offered. And I'm here to protect Earth's, John countered. A moment passed, then they both laughed, breaking the tension. We're both terrible liars, John said, shaking his head. Speak for yourself, Nira replied with a smirk. I'm an excellent liar. Their conversation was interrupted when John's comm unit buzzed. He checked it discreetly, his expression turning serious. I need to go, he said, standing abruptly. Duty calls? Problem? Nira asked, her intelligence training kicking in. John hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. There's a smuggling ring operating out of the station. We've been tracking them for months. They're moving weapons-grade materials through the Taurus sector, the same sector your people want mining rights to. Nira's eyes widened. This aligned with intelligence reports she'd received about unusual activity in the sector. The Black Star Syndicate, she said without thinking. John's gaze sharpened. You know about them? They've been on our radar too, she admitted. They've hit Krylorian outposts twice in the past standard year. A silent communication passed between them, professional respect overriding their respective orders. I'm following up on a lead right now, John said. Want to come? Every instinct told Nira this was dangerous, both professionally and personally. Getting further involved with a human could compromise her mission. But if the Black Star Syndicate was operating here, that was a threat to Krylorian interests too. Lead the way, Captain, she decided. As they left the lounge together, Nira was acutely aware of John's presence beside her. The way he moved with controlled power, the subtle scent of him that was distinctly human yet not unpleasant. Despite her mission and the complications it presented, she couldn't deny the growing attraction she felt. And judging by the way his eyes occasionally lingered on her, the feeling was mutual. Just so we're clear, she said as they entered a less populated section of the station, this doesn't mean I trust you. John's lips curved into that now familiar smirk. Wouldn't dream of it, Commander? But the way he said it with warmth underneath the professional facade made Nira wonder just how complicated this mission was about to become. The service corridors of Nexus Prime were a labyrinth of narrow passages, dimly lit by strips of blue emergency lighting. John moved with surprising stealth for a man of his size, checking his handheld scanner periodically as they navigated deeper into the station's maintenance areas. The smugglers use these corridors to move contraband, he explained in a hushed voice. My intel suggests they have a drop point somewhere in Section 47B. Nira nodded, impressed despite herself. Her broken hand throbbed dully beneath a medical wrap, a constant reminder of her underestimation of human physiology. She found herself studying John's movements, noting the efficient economy in each step, the alertness in his posture. For a species she'd always considered physically inferior, he moved like a predator. Your military training is showing, Captain, she whispered. Not bad for a human. John glanced back at her, that infuriating half-smile playing on his lips. I'll take that as a compliment, coming from a Krylorian elite guard. They reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. John consulted his scanner, frowning. Signals bouncing. Could be interference, or they might be using scramblers. Nira tapped her comm unit, switching to thermal imaging. Nothing on heat signatures either. Your smugglers are good at covering their tracks. A sudden clang echoed from the corridor to their left, followed by voices. John reacted instantly, grabbing Nira's uninjured hand and pulling her toward a small maintenance closet set into the wall. In here, he hissed, sliding the door open and tugging her inside. The closet was barely large enough for one person, let alone 2. Nira found herself pressed against John's chest, their bodies flushed together in the tight space. The door slid shut with a soft hiss, plunging them into near darkness, save for a thin strip of blue light seeping through the bottom of the door. Was this really necessary? Nira whispered, acutely aware of every point of contact between them. His body radiated heat, and she could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her palm, where it rested on his chest. Would you prefer to explain to a group of armed smugglers why we're sneaking around their territory? John replied, his breath warm against her ear. Nira had to concede the point. Still, the closeness was distracting. In the dim light, she could just make out the contours of his face, the strong line of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes as they adjusted to the darkness. Outside, the voices grew louder. Two males discussing shipment schedules in a dialect Nira recognized as Centaurian. John tensed, listening intently. His arm tightened around her waist, pulling her even closer as he shifted to better hear the conversation. The movement brought their faces inches apart. Nira's breath caught in her throat. This close, she could detect the subtle scent of him, clean sweat, some kind of earth spice she couldn't identify, and something else uniquely human. It was not unpleasant. "They're talking about a major shipment," John whispered, so softly she felt rather than heard the words. "Yeah, something big coming through in 2 days." Nira nodded, trying to focus on the intelligence, rather than the feeling of his muscled torso pressed against hers. Her species ran hotter than humans, and the small space was quickly becoming uncomfortably warm, or perhaps that was just her reaction to their proximity. The voices outside faded as the smugglers moved on. Still, neither of them made a move to leave their hiding place. In the silence, the tension between them seemed to thicken, becoming almost tangible. "We should go," Nira said, but made no attempt to move. "Probably," John agreed, his eyes dropping to her lips. Later, Nira wouldn't be able to say who moved first. Perhaps they both did. One moment they were staring at each other in the dim blue light, and the next his mouth was on hers, hot and demanding. She responded with equal fervor, her good hand sliding up to grip the back of his neck. The kiss was nothing like she'd expected. Krylorian mating rituals were formalized, controlled affairs, nothing like this raw, primal connection. John kissed like he did everything else, with confident precision and unexpected intensity. His hands moved to her waist, fingers pressing into the soft fabric of her outfit, pulling her impossibly closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Nira felt disoriented. This wasn't part of the mission. This wasn't what she was supposed to be doing with the enemy. Except he didn't feel like the enemy anymore. That was, she began, unsure how to categorize the experience. "Unexpected?" John suggested, his voice rougher than before. "I was going to say, not terrible for a human," Nira replied, attempting to regain some equilibrium through humor. John chuckled, the sound vibrating through his chest against hers. "High praise indeed." His expression grew more serious. "We should probably talk about what's really going on here, Nira. Between us and between our people." The use of her first name, without her rank, sent an unexpected thrill through her. But before she could respond, her comm unit buzzed with an incoming message. Reluctantly, she pulled away enough to check it. "It's from my superior," she said, scanning the encrypted text. "He's demanding an update on my progress." The word felt bitter on her tongue now. John's expression hardened slightly. "Your mission to spy on us, you mean?" Nira met his gaze directly. "Just as you're gathering intelligence on us. Let's not pretend we're not both doing our jobs, Captain." "John," he corrected. "After that kiss, I think we're past formalities." Despite everything, her mission, her broken hand, the complications of interspecies diplomacy, Nira found herself smiling. "Perhaps we are..." "John," he reached for the door control. "We should continue this conversation somewhere more private and comfortable." As they slipped out of the closet and back into the corridor, Nira knew she was crossing a line. Whatever happened next would change everything. Her mission, her career, possibly even relations between their species. And yet, as John's hand found hers in the dim corridor, she couldn't bring herself to care. John's quarters were Spartan but comfortable, located in the Earth delegation section of the diplomatic wing. As the door slid shut behind them, the professional facade they'd both maintained in public dissolved. Their lips met again, more urgently this time, as if making up for lost time. "Your superiors would court-martial you for this," Nira murmured against his mouth, her good hand already working at the fastenings of his uniform jacket. "Probably," John agreed, his fingers tangling in her silvery hair, loosening it from its tight ponytail. "Worth it, though." What followed was a revelation for Nira. Krylorian intimacy was typically performative, a display of physical prowess and endurance. This was something entirely different. Tender at times, fierce at others, but always focused on mutual pleasure rather than demonstration of ability. John's hands explored her orange skin with reverent curiosity, treating each gasp and shiver as valuable intelligence. His lips traced the subtle ridges along her collarbone that distinguished her species, while she marveled at the unexpected softness of his skin contrasted with the unyielding hardness of the muscles beneath. "How are you so?" she breathed, running her palm over his abdomen, still amazed at the density of the muscle there. "Earth's gravity is 1.2 times Nexus Prime's," he explained between kisses. "We're built differently. Plus, I work at it." Nira had never considered a human could be physically impressive, let alone desirable. Yet here she was, discovering that the differences between their species created a fascinating complementarity. His lower body temperature made his touch feel refreshingly cool against her naturally warmer skin. The slight variations in their anatomies led to unexpected pleasures. In the aftermath, they lay tangled in his sheets, her silver hair spread across his chest, her orange skin glowing with exertion. That was... Nira searched for the right words. "Not terrible for a human," John suggested with a grin. She laughed, a genuine sound of delight. "I may need to revise my assessment of your species' capabilities." "Happy to change your mind," he replied, tracing patterns on her shoulder, "though I'm pretty sure this violates about a dozen protocols on both sides." Reality began to intrude on their private moment. Nira thought of General Dravos, of her mission, of the consequences of what she'd just done. By Krylorian standards, she'd committed treason. By human standards, too, probably. "What are we doing, John?" she asked softly. Before he could answer, the room's emergency lighting flashed red and a piercing alarm sounded. Both of them were instantly alert, military training overriding everything else. "Proximity alert," John said, already reaching for his uniform. "Someone's trying to..." The explosion ripped through the outer door, sending them both flying off the bed. John hit the wall with a grunt of pain, while Nira rolled into a defensive crouch, naked and unarmed, but ready to fight. Through the smoke poured four figures in black combat gear, faces obscured by tactical masks. The insignia on their shoulders, a black star on a field of crimson, identified them immediately. "Syndicate!" Nira shouted, diving for her discarded weapon belt. John was faster, rolling to his feet and charging the first intruder before they could bring their weapon to bear. His fist connected with the attacker's mask with a sickening crunch, dropping them instantly. The second assailant fired, the energy bolt missing John by inches and scorching the wall behind him. Nira, having retrieved her sidearm, returned fire, catching the shooter in the shoulder and spinning them around. The third and fourth attackers split up, one engaging John in hand-to-hand while the other took aim at Nira. She ducked behind the bed as energy bolts sizzled through the air where she'd been standing. "John!" she called, tossing him her backup blaster. He caught it one-handed while grappling with his opponent, then fired point-blank into the attacker's side. The syndicate operative crumpled. Nira was exchanging fire with the last intruder when she saw movement from the corner of her eye. The first attacker John had downed was back up, aiming directly at his exposed back. "Behind you!" she screamed, but it was too late. The energy bolt caught John square between the shoulder blades. He staggered forward, face contorted in pain, then collapsed to his knees. Something primal and protective erupted in the Nira. With a war cry that would have made her ancestors proud, she vaulted over the bed and unleashed a barrage of fire at both remaining attackers, driving them back toward the shattered doorway. One fell, chest smoking from multiple hits. The other retreated, firing wildly as they disappeared into the corridor. Nira rushed to John, who lay face down and motionless on the floor. With gentle hands, she turned him over, dreading what she might find. His eyes fluttered open, glazed with pain but alert. "Armor weave," he gasped, gesturing to his back where the uniform had melted, but the skin beneath remained unburned. "Standard issue for EDF officers. Hurts like hell, though." Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by the realization that they were both still very naked, and station security would be arriving any moment. "We need to move," she said, helping him to his feet. "This wasn't random. The syndicate knew exactly where to find you." John nodded grimly, wincing as he reached for his clothes, "Which means we've got a leak, someone who knows about our investigation." Or someone who knows about us, Naira added, quickly pulling on her own uniform. My comm unit pinged right before the attack. It was General Dravos ordering me to return to the Krylorian embassy immediately. John's eyes narrowed. You think your general is working with the syndicate? I don't know, Naira admitted, but the timing is suspicious. And if he is, I can't go back there. The station's security alarms were blaring now, and they could hear the pounding of boots in the corridor outside. We need to disappear, John decided, pulling a hidden panel from the wall to reveal an emergency kit and several weapons, at least until we figure out who we can trust. Naira nodded, her mind racing. She'd just betrayed her mission, her superior, possibly her entire species. And yet, looking at John as he efficiently prepared for their escape, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Together then, she said, accepting the blaster he handed her. His eyes met hers, serious but with that hint of a smile she was coming to cherish. Together? The underbelly of Nexus Prime was a stark contrast to the gleaming diplomatic quarters above. Here the station showed its age. Corroded pipes leaked coolant, flickering lights cast eerie shadows, and the air carried the musty scent of recycled atmosphere that had passed through too many filters. For 3 days, Naira and John had navigated this labyrinth, evading both station security and syndicate hunters. They'd found refuge in an abandoned maintenance hub that John had discovered during previous reconnaissance missions. Home sweet home, he joked when they first arrived, gesturing to the cramped space with its salvaged cot and makeshift security system. Now, as Naira returned from a scouting mission, she found John hunched over a portable terminal, analyzing data they'd stolen from a syndicate courier the day before. Any luck? She asked, setting down the supplies she'd managed to scrounge. John looked up, his face lighting with a smile that made her heart skip. Even after days on the run, disheveled and exhausted, he maintained that infuriating confidence that she'd first found so grating, but now found endearing. Actually, yes, I've decrypted part of their communications. Look at this. He gestured to the screen where a map of the Taurus sector glowed with highlighted areas. These aren't just mining sites, they're weapons caches. The syndicate has been stockpiling arms throughout the sector. Naira leaned closer, her silver hair falling forward as she studied the display. That's why Krylorian Command wants the mining rights so badly. It's not about resources, it's about controlling these locations. And look who's been authorizing the shipments, John tapped a command, bringing up a series of encrypted authorizations. The encryption is Krylorian military grade, but the signature pattern matches what you showed me from General Dravos's communications. Naira felt sick. My own commander working with criminals, for what? Money? Power? War, John said grimly. These aren't defensive stockpiles. They're staging points for an offensive. I think Dravos is planning to use the Syndicate to provoke a conflict with Earth. The implications were staggering. A war between their species would devastate both sides and destabilize the entire sector. Naira sank onto the cot, suddenly lightheaded. A wave of nausea swept through her, not entirely due to the revelation about Dravos. Are you okay? John asked immediately at her side. You look pale, well, as pale as your orange skin gets. I'm fine, she insisted, though she'd been feeling off for the past day. Just processing the betrayal. John wasn't convinced. He pressed a hand to her forehead, frowning. You're burning up, even for a Krylorian. Our normal body temperature is higher than yours, she reminded him. Not this high, he countered, reaching for the medical scanner in their emergency kit. He ran the device over her, his frown deepening as he read the results. What? She demanded, recognizing his expression. What's wrong? John hesitated, then showed her the scanner's display. Your hormone levels are unusual, and there's a secondary life sign. Naira stared at the readings, uncomprehending at first, then with dawning shock. That's not possible. The scanner doesn't lie, John said quietly. You're pregnant. But we're different species, Naira protested. Interspecies reproduction is supposed to be impossible without genetic engineering. John ran a hand through his hair, looking as bewildered as she felt. Apparently not between humans and Krylorians. Naira placed a hand on her abdomen, trying to process this impossible development. In Krylorian culture, reproduction was carefully planned, often arranged for genetic optimization. Spontaneous pregnancy, especially with an alien, was unheard of. "How do you feel about this?" John asked cautiously. Neera looked up at him, surprised to find not panic but a strange, fierce joy building within her. I don't know, it's unexpected, but not unwelcome." She studied his face. "And you?" A slow smile spread across his features, genuine and warm. Terrified, amazed, proud. He placed his hand over hers on her stomach, mostly amazed. The moment of connection was interrupted by an alert from their perimeter sensors. Someone was approaching. Both instantly shifted to combat mode, weapons drawn and ready. John positioned himself between Neera and the entrance, a protective gesture she might have resented days ago, but now appreciated. The door slid open to reveal not Syndicate enforcers, but a single Taurian female, her forearms raised in a gesture of peace. "Commander Vex, Captain Reed," she said, her multifaceted eyes gleaming in the dim light. "I am Dr. Lynn Tora, Chief Xenobiologist for the Galactic Science Consortium. I've been tracking unusual biometric readings in this sector." Her gaze dropped to Neera's abdomen. "It seems I've found the source." "How did you find us?" John demanded, weapon still raised. "Your hybrid embryo is emitting a unique energy signature," Dr. Tora explained. "Quite fascinating, actually. Nothing like it has ever been recorded." Neera and John exchanged glances. "Our child is detectable?" Neera asked. "Only to specialized equipment which I happen to possess," Dr. Tora assured them. "But you should know, I'm not the only one looking. The Syndicate has similar technology, and they're closing in." "Why would the Syndicate care about our baby?" John asked. Dr. Tora's expression turned grave. "Because a viable human Krylorian hybrid changes everything. It proves your species are compatible at a fundamental level, undermining the narrative of irreconcilable differences that Dravos and his human counterparts have been building to justify conflict." "Human counterparts?" Neera repeated. "There are humans involved in this conspiracy too." "Admiral Perkins of your Earth Defense Force," Dr. Tora confirmed. "He and Dravos have been orchestrating this together, using the Syndicate as their proxy." John cursed, the betrayal hitting him as hard as it had hit Neera. "We need to expose them. We have the data now, but we need to get it to people who can act on it." "And we need to protect your child," Dr. Tora added. "Its existence is living proof that your species aren't enemies, but potentially perfect complements to each other." Neera's hand tightened on her weapon. "Then we need to move. Now." As they gathered their essential gear, Neera caught John watching her with an expression of wonder and determination. "What?" she asked. "Just thinking," he replied with that familiar half-smile, "that breaking your hand on my abs might be the best thing that ever happened to both our species." Despite everything, the danger, the betrayal, the impossible pregnancy, Neera found herself laughing. "Don't push your luck, human." But as they followed Dr. Tora into the corridor, Neera's free hand found John's, their fingers intertwining. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The Grand Nexus Hotel occupied the uppermost levels of the station, its luxury a stark contrast to the gritty underbelly where they had been hiding. Dr. Tora had informed them that General Dravos had arranged a clandestine meeting with Syndicate representatives in one of the hotel's private conference rooms, ostensibly for a security briefing on the ongoing negotiations. "Admiral Perkins will be there too," Dr. Tora had explained as they formulated their plan. "My sources indicate he's been manipulated by Dravos, fed false intelligence suggesting Krylorians are planning a first strike against Earth colonies." "That doesn't sound like Perkins," John had frowned. "He's always been a voice of reason in the EDF." Now, as they moved through the hotel service corridors disguised as maintenance staff, Neera glanced at John. "You really believe Perkins is being deceived?" "I've served under him for years," John replied, adjusting the cap that partially concealed his features. "He's tough but fair, dedicated to peace. If he's involved in this, there's more to the story." Neera's hand instinctively went to her abdomen. The pregnancy was still in its earliest stages, but knowing it existed had changed everything. This wasn't just about preventing a war anymore. It was about creating a future where their child could exist without being seen as an abomination or political tool. "How are you feeling?" John asked softly, noticing her gesture. "Like I'm carrying the most politically inconvenient baby in galactic history," she replied with a wry smile. "But otherwise fine. Krylorian women don't experience morning sickness." "Lucky," John chuckled. "Human women get hit hard with that. We make up for it with a gestation period that's 2 months longer," Naira countered. "Though who knows how this hybrid pregnancy will progress." Dr. Tora, leading the way with her 4 arms, efficiently managing both their equipment and a stolen maintenance cart, glanced back at them. "Based on my preliminary scans, I'd estimate a 7-month gestation, splitting the difference between your species. The fetus is developing remarkably well, adapting genetic material from both parents with surprising compatibility." "Our little miracle," John murmured, his hand briefly covering Nira's on her stomach. The tender moment was interrupted as they reached their destination, a service panel adjacent to the conference room where the meeting would take place. "Remember the plan, Doctor," Tora whispered. "I'll monitor from here while you two place the recording devices. We need irrefutable evidence of the conspiracy." Nira nodded, her military training taking over as she focused on the mission. She and John slipped through the panel into a small server room that connected to the conference space. 5 minutes until they arrive," John noted, checking his wrist display. They worked quickly, placing microscopic recording devices at strategic points around the room. As Naira reached up to position the final device in a light fixture, a wave of dizziness washed over her. She swayed slightly, and John was instantly at her side, strong arms steadying her. "I'm fine," she insisted before he could ask. "Just moved too quickly." John's eyes reflected concern, but he didn't push the issue. "Last one's in place. Let's get back to the server room." They had just slipped back through the hidden access panel when the conference room door opened. Through the one-way observation port, they watched as General Dravos entered, followed by 2 syndicate operatives in civilian attire, and finally Admiral Perkins. Perkins looked troubled, his usually confident bearing diminished. He was older than John by at least 20 years, with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who had seen too many conflicts. "Let's get this over with, Dravos," Perkins said without preamble. "I've reviewed your intelligence reports, and something doesn't add up." Dravos, tall even for a Krylorian with deep orange skin and military short silver hair, smiled thinly. "What doesn't add up, Admiral, is why your ships are conducting exercises so close to our mining operations." "Those exercises were scheduled months ago," Perkins countered, "and they're defensive in nature, unlike the weapon stockpiles your people have been amassing." One of the syndicate operatives, a reptilian saurian, placed a datapad on the table. "Perhaps this will clarify matters. We've intercepted communications indicating a Krylorian strike force is preparing to move against human outposts in the Taurus sector." Naira tensed. The communications were obviously fabricated, but they looked convincing. "That's impossible," Perkins said, studying the data. "This would have to be authorized at the highest levels of Krylorian command." "It was," Dravos confirmed smoothly, "but not by me. There are factions within our military that see humans as a threat to be eliminated. I've been trying to moderate their influence, but I'm losing that battle." Nira's eyes widened as she realized Dravos's game. He was positioning himself as the reasonable Krylorian trying to prevent war, while simultaneously engineering the very conflict he claimed to oppose. "He's good," she whispered to John. "He's making it look like he's the one being manipulated, not Perkins." John nodded grimly. "Classic false flag operation. Create the threat, then offer to help fight against it." In the conference room, Perkins was pacing, clearly troubled. "If what you're saying is true, we need to bring this to the diplomatic corps immediately." "And start a panic?" Dravos countered. "No, Admiral. We need to handle this quietly. A surgical strike against these rogue elements, conducted jointly by your forces and mine. The Syndicate can provide the intelligence we need." The Saurian nodded. "For the right price, of course." Perkins stopped pacing, his expression hardening. "I don't work with criminals, General, and something about this entire situation stinks worse than a Jovian swamp pit." Dravos's facade of reasonableness slipped for just a moment, revealing the cold calculation beneath. You don't have a choice, Admiral. Either work with us or watch as your colonies burn. We've got enough, John whispered. This proves Dravos is manipulating the situation. Nira nodded, but as they prepared to retreat, her comm unit buzzed with an incoming signal, loud enough to be heard in the sudden silence of the conference room. All heads turned toward the server room. We've got company, Dravos barked, drawing his sidearm. Time for Plan B, John muttered, pulling Nira behind the server banks as energy bolts began tearing through the thin wall separating them from the conference room. What's Plan B? Nira asked, drawing her own weapon. John grinned, that infuriating, confident smirk that had first caught her attention in the gym. Improvise? As the wall disintegrated under concentrated fire, Nira found herself oddly calm. Whatever happened next, she and John would face it together, fighting not just for themselves or their respective species, but for the impossible child they had created. A child whose very existence proved that humans and Krylorians weren't meant to be enemies, but partners. Energy bolts sizzled through the air as John pulled Nira behind a reinforced server bank. The metallic tang of ionized air filled the small room, punctuated by the sharp crack of weapons fire. Surrender now, Dravos's voice boomed from the conference room. You're outnumbered and outgunned. John caught Nira's eye and mouthed silently, the recording. She nodded, understanding immediately. While they'd been discovered, the recording devices were still transmitting. With a few quick taps on her wrist unit, Nira connected to Dr. Tara's system and initiated the station-wide broadcast. Almost instantly, Dravos's voice echoed throughout the station's public announcement system. You don't have a choice, Admiral. Either work with us or watch as your colonies burn. The firing from the conference room faltered momentarily as the conspirators realized what was happening. What the hell? One of the syndicate operatives growled. Taking advantage of the momentary confusion, John leaned out from cover and fired 2 precise shots, disarming one of the syndicate members. Captain Reed? Admiral Perkins' voice cut through the chaos. Is that you? Yes, sir, John called back. We have evidence that General Dravos has been manipulating both our governments, trying to instigate a war. A barrage of energy bolts answered him, forcing him back into cover. One shot grazed Nira's shoulder, searing through her disguise and burning the orange skin beneath. She hissed in pain, clutching the wound. Nira! John's face contorted with concern. I'm fine, she gritted out, though the pain was intense. Just a graze. The injury triggered something primal in John. His expression hardened, eyes narrowing with a focus that Nira had never seen before. Without warning, he burst from cover, moving with such explosive speed that the syndicate operatives couldn't track him. He reached the first operative before the Saurian could fire, delivering a devastating punch to its midsection that lifted the reptilian creature off its feet. The second operative managed to get off a shot that John simply absorbed, the energy bolt scorching his uniform but seemingly causing no injury as he drove forward, disarming the shooter with a precise strike. General Dravos, seeing his allies fall, took aim directly at John. Impressive, human, he snarled, but not good enough. Before he could fire, Admiral Perkins tackled him from behind, sending the shot wide. That's enough, General. I won't be part of your war. As the 2 military leaders grappled, Dr. Tara appeared at the server room entrance, all 4 arms wielding different devices. The station security is on its way, she announced, and the broadcast has reached every corner of Nexus Prime, including both the Earth and Krylorian embassies. Nira staggered to her feet, pressing a hand to her wounded shoulder. The pain was significant, but her concern for John overrode it. She watched in amazement as he subdued the second syndicate operative with seemingly effortless strength. How are you not injured? She asked, gesturing to the scorch mark on his chest where the energy bolt had hit. John gave her that familiar smirk. Remember your broken hand? Humans might not look tough, but we're surprisingly resilient, especially those of us who lift all that metal and iron. A commotion at the main entrance announced the arrival of station security, led by representatives from both Earth and Krylorian delegations. They quickly took control of the situation, securing Dravos and the syndicate operatives. Admiral Perkins approached John and Nira, his expression a mixture of relief and regret. Captain, I owe you an apology. I should have seen through Dravos's deception. "He was convincing, sir," John replied respectfully. "Not convincing enough," Perkins said grimly. "I had my doubts, which is why I came today, to confront him directly." His gaze shifted to Naira, then to her injury. "You need medical attention, Commander." "I've had worse," Nora assured him, though she leaned slightly against John for support. And Perkins's eyes narrowed slightly as he observed their proximity. "You two seem close." Before either could respond, Dr. Tora stepped forward. "Admiral, there's something you should know. These two have done more than expose a conspiracy. They have made history." She gestured to Nira's abdomen. "Commander Vex is carrying Captain Reed's child, the first natural human Krylorian hybrid in recorded history." Perkins's eyebrows shot up. "That's impossible." "Apparently not," John replied, his arm tightening protectively around Naira's waist. A slow smile spread across the Admiral's weathered face. "Well, I'll be damned. That certainly complicates the irreconcilable differences narrative, doesn't it?" 6 months later, the newly established Human Krylorian Cultural Exchange Center on Nexus Prime was hosting its inaugural celebration. The spacious atrium was filled with diplomats, scientists, and citizens from both species mingling with a newfound camaraderie that would have been unthinkable half a year earlier. At the center of it all stood Nira and John, now officially recognized as the first cross-species diplomatic liaison team. Nira's pregnancy was in its final stages, her orange skin stretched taut over her swollen abdomen, while John hovered nearby, ever attentive. "Stop fussing," she chided him affectionately. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass." "Can't help it," he replied, adjusting the ceremonial sash she wore as a representative of the Krylorian government. "Human instinct, we get protective." "As if I couldn't still take down most of the people in this room," she scoffed, although her eyes sparkled with amusement. "With one hand tied behind your back," John agreed, "though maybe not the hand you broke on my abs. That one might still be a little weak." Naira laughed, a sound that still sent warmth spreading through his chest. "I'll never live that down, will I?" "Not a chance," he grinned, placing a gentle hand on her belly, where their child, a daughter, according to Dr. Tara's scans, was currently performing what felt like combat maneuvers. "She's going to have your strength and my iron stomach. The galaxy doesn't stand a chance." Admiral Perkins approached, now serving as Earth's chief diplomat to the Krylorian people. The exposure of Dravos's conspiracy had led to sweeping changes in both governments, with warhawks replaced by moderates committed to peaceful cooperation. "The medical team reports that everything is proceeding perfectly with the pregnancy," Perkins informed them. "Dr. Tora believes you'll deliver within the week." "Thank the stars," Nira sighed. "I'm ready to meet this little warrior." "She's already a symbol of hope for both our peoples," Perkins noted, "the living proof that we're stronger together than apart." As the celebration continued around them, John led Nira to a quieter corner of the atrium, where they could have a moment of privacy. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "About punching me that day in the gym?" Nira pretended to consider the question seriously. "Well, breaking my hand was unpleasant, and you are insufferably smug about your abdominal muscles." "They are pretty impressive," he agreed with mock solemnity. "But," she continued, taking his hand and placing it on her stomach where their daughter was kicking, "I think things worked out rather well, all things considered." John leaned down to kiss her, no longer caring about the diplomatic protocols or curious onlookers. When they parted, his expression was serious despite his smile. "I never thought I'd say this to a woman who once mocked my workout routine, but I love you, Commander Nira Vex. And I never thought I'd fall for a human whose stomach is harder than Krylorian battle armor," she replied. "But here we are. I love you too, Captain John Reed." As their daughter kicked again, as if in agreement, Naira couldn't help but reflect on the strange journey that had brought them here. From a broken hand to a healed galaxy, from mockery to love, from enemies to partners. All because she'd underestimated the strength of a human man and his iron-hard abs. Some mistakes, she decided, were worth making.